Today on the Bourbon Bytes podcast, Bulleit drops a massive 20-year-old rye. We have an official Dragon Con Bourbon. And Nintendo finally brings Star Fox to the Switch 2. Then I have a bite-sized review of the new Maker's Mark Star Hill Farm 2026. Hello everyone and welcome to the Bourbon Bytes podcast. I'm your host Clifton and this is the week of July 2nd, 2026. We are now in the full swing of summer. I know the July 4th weekend is coming up and hopefully you all are going to have a fantastic long weekend. We don't do anything too crazy here. There's a local park that shoots off fireworks that we can walk to, so we'll probably walk down there and enjoy the show, maybe have a to-go cup of bourbon on the way. But not only is it getting warm, the whiskey drops are getting hotter this year. So get yourself a glass poured or a coffee, depending on when you're listening to this, and let's get into the hottest topics of the week. The first of which was announced last week, and this is the oldest rye ever from Bulleit. So this is limited to just 1,776 bottles, obviously to honor the nation's 250th anniversary. And it's made up of their 95.5 mash bill. Now I'm really excited because I love Indiana rye whiskey. Now what's interesting is this was aged in Kentucky but distilled in Indiana. So it's going to have a lot of the effects of the Kentucky heat on it, but of course that delicious Indiana rye that we've come to know and love. Now, what's crazy interesting is this is also going to be released at cask strength, and it's going to be 137 proof. So nearly hazmat rye whiskey. Now, of course, it's going to be hard to get your hands on a bottle. Retail on it's going to be about $300, but I think it's incredible to see such a highly aged rye whiskey at a massive proof. You know, with Bulleit, I feel like a lot of times they'll release high age stuff but lower proof, or vice versa, high proof stuff and lower age. So seeing them come out with this special release gets me really excited. I hope it becomes a trend to continue to release older rye whiskeys. I'm a big fan of Bulleit 12-year rye, so I don't know if I'll get my hands on this with there being such limited allocation of it, but knowing how much I love Indiana rye, never had it quite that old. I think I've had 13 years, 6 months is the oldest Indiana rye I've had, but that was incredible. I think that was 120 proof, so I can only imagine this is going to be pretty darn great at 20 years old. It also could be over oaked. You never know. I mean, again, rye whiskey is such an interesting category. The only time I've had older rye whiskey than that is like Canadian whiskey, but that's such a different category. I don't think it really exemplifies what an Indiana rye could taste like at that age. So if you have a chance to try this, let me know. Do you think it's over oaked or do you think it's just right? I would love to hear your thoughts. Now, in direct contrast to this $300 Bulleit, Redwood Empire is releasing a budget bottle for just $39.99. This is a 4-grain expression that marries their Northern California grain to glass spirit with 4 to 14-year-old high wheat bourbons from both Kentucky and Indiana. And they're calling this the Colonel Armstrong Wheated Bourbon. So even though it's a 4-grain, it is going to be considered a wheated bourbon. The mash bill is 59% corn, 30% wheat, 6% rye, and 5% malted barley. And it's going to come in at 94 proof. Now this is a small barrel blend, or relatively small. 122 barrels went into this. And yeah, I think it's great to see a Redwood Empire release coming in at a really good price point. Definitely one I'm going to keep an eye out for. I don't expect it to impress me like some of their high-end stuff, but love to see it. Now, another one that caught my eye just because of the whole nerddom of this podcast, Dragon Con, which is one of the largest multimedia pop culture conventions in the United States. They've actually just announced their Dragon Con Bourbon. And this is their second annual release of this. And I had no idea that Dragon Con Spirits even existed. It's a collaboration with Atlanta-based Old Fourth Distillery and Dragon Con's co-founders to celebrate the convention's 40th anniversary. It's a limited edition high rye bourbon, and it's aged between 4 to 6 years old and bottled at 94 proof. Interestingly enough, this is also priced at $40, same price as that new Redwood Empire release. But I didn't know this was a thing. I love to see nerd culture come together and make cool spirits. Now, they've also previously released a vodka. They actually have a mead, which is really cool. But yeah, this is a bourbon. Now, looking at the source, this is MGP bourbon, so they're very straightforward with that, but it has been aged in Atlanta. So it looks like you can get your bottles of this at Dragon Con coming up later this year in about 2 months. It's in beginning of September, and they'll offer bottle engraving. So if anyone's going to that, let me know. I wish I could make it to Atlanta. I mean, there's always such fun conventions happening there. Being on the West Coast, it's a little bit harder, but really, really cool. I'm hoping to see more fun, nerdy collaborations like that. Now, Father's Day was just last weekend, but there are two new spirits that I'm reading about that I imagine were probably released for the occasion. So the first of which is from Sweetens Cove, and they're releasing their Father's Finish bourbon. Not sure about that name, but it is a $70 bourbon. It says it is a blend of aged bourbons incorporating a magnetic removable ball marker in their unique cork design. So I had to do a double take. I didn't know what they meant by that, but I assume it's to do with golfing. That kind of is the theme here with Sweetens Cove. They've done quite a bit of new releases lately to kind of distance themselves from their first releases. They have a 6-year-old bourbon. They have a 5-year-old Tennessee bourbon. This one doesn't have an age statement, but is a blend of Kentucky and Tennessee whiskeys, and it is finished in cuvée wine barrels. It's going to be released at 98 proof. But yeah, I think it was a Father's Day release, but it is still available to the public. So if you're looking for a special gift for a father or dad figure in your life, maybe consider giving them a Father's Finish. All right, well, before I get into my bite-sized review, I do want to mention a new video game release that has people talking. So this is the new release of Star Fox for Nintendo Switch 2. So, all the big flashy things about a new Star Fox game were a little bit misleading. Technically, it's a remake of Star Fox 64, but it's been updated with all of the latest graphics and mechanics of a modern game. But if you look at it, it actually is a truly faithful looking edition of this game. Personally, I've only played a little bit of Star Fox 64. I was a big fan of the Super Nintendo game when I was little, so I'm really excited about this re-release. People say they've really nailed the nostalgic element of Star Fox. They didn't overcomplicate it. The controls are pretty similar based on what I've seen on gameplay footage, and people are hopeful that this can signal an era of new, modern Star Fox games. It's an amazing IP. Like I said, I love the brand, I love the characters, I love the voices of the characters. So when I saw this coming out, I thought it was going to be a new story, but hearing that it's kind of just a rehash of Star Fox 64, it's a little bit disappointing. But again, people are hopeful that this is going to reignite an interest in the franchise and maybe lead to future Star Fox games. I would 100% be here for it. I'll probably pick this up if it goes on sale. Like I said, I'm not in a huge rush to play this. I can always play the classic ones if I need to. But I did want to talk about it since this just came out. I think it was either last week or early this week. But people are definitely talking about it. Well, I know this is a very loose tie, but our bite-sized review also has to do with the stars. So let's get into it. All right, well, like I said, it's a loose connection, but I'm reviewing the new Star Hill Farm from Maker's Mark. Now, this is the 2026 release. I didn't have a chance to try the 2025, but I heard good things about it. It's actually their first new mash bill that they've ever released at Maker's Mark. Of course, talking about last year's, but this is the first new whiskey from the brand in 70 years. It's actually their first wheat whiskey because Maker's Mark is a wheated bourbon, but it's still a bourbon. It's still more corn. This has more wheat in the mash bill than corn. Actually, it's 27% wheat, 62% malted wheat, and 11% malted barley. So there's no corn in here at all. And they say the goal of Star Hill Farm Whiskey is to celebrate the role regenerative agriculture plays to create healthier soil and better flavor. So each of these, they partner with local farmers to show the nuances and influence of land in whiskey making. Now, last year, this became the first whiskey to earn an estate whiskey certification. And this one continues that tradition with the Estate Whiskey Alliance. This is established by the University of Kentucky to highlight local sourcing and sustainable production and recognize whiskey producers entirely on the distillery estate, using grains grown on estate-owned or controlled land. So again, I'm a huge fan of this. I love estate-grown whiskey or estate-distilled products. Even small farmers just trying their distillate to me is so special. So when Maker's Mark first announced this, I was really excited to get my hands on it. By the way, this one comes in at 116.4 proof. It comes in a 700 milliliter bottle, and the price was about $120. So up there for a Maker's Mark product for sure. Now I will note there's not an age statement on this whiskey, but they do tell you that the grains were harvested, distilled, and barreled in both fall of 2017 and fall of 2018. So I would guess this whiskey's between 6 and 8 years old. But again, no age statement here. I think that's an interesting choice, especially for a high-end bottle. You would think they would have an age statement on it, but they give you a little bit of info here, like I said. So let's go ahead and get this whiskey poured and see how it is. By the way, if you are new to the podcast or channel, I typically do love high-end Maker's Mark products. I always used to say that the only Maker's Mark I don't like is the regular Maker's Mark, but everything from the 46 to the cast strengths to the private selects to the wood finishing series, I've been a fan of. So this being my first new addition to the Maker's Mark lineup in a couple years, I'm pretty excited. Let's go ahead and give it a nose and see what's going on. Oh, interesting. There's like a sweet effervescence that's kind of happening here. It kind of reminds me of when you just pour a soda and you're getting a little bit of that tingly on the nose as you're, pouring it into your mouth. I'm getting a little bit of cola notes here, along with a lot of sweetness. It's a lot sweeter than most colas are. Definitely some like vanilla creaminess on the nose, maybe a touch of cherry, but it's like a tart cherry versus like a sweeter maraschino or Luxardo cherry. You're getting a little bit of that wheat grain note that you get on some, smaller or craft wheated bourbons and wheat whiskeys. Not like barnyardy in some ways, like some of these do. It definitely is more like a traditional whiskey nose. Honestly, it smells pretty similar to some Maker's Mark I've had before. Not getting too much oak here. Again, we don't know the age on it, but I'm hoping to see a little bit more complexity on the palate because the nose is sweet, it's nice, but nothing too crazy. So let's see how it does on the taste. Cheers. Okay. Not crazy different from the nose, honestly. It's still very sweet, but it's an interesting sweetness. It's not like, I said vanilla on the nose, but it was more of the creamy aspect. This isn't like a vanilla or caramel. Honestly, it's kind of still like that powdered sugar kind of note, but almost has a bit of a burnt sugar kind of element. Like you burn a dessert a little bit around the edges, or even, this is a weirdly specific note, but it's like you have a creme brulee, but you only eat the top part. So that solidified sugar that's been charred with like the blowtorch or whatever, if you're just eating that and not the custard below, that's kind of the flavor profile happening here. It's bright, it's sweet, not as fruity as it was on the nose, but it's very, very desserty on the palate. Let me get a second sip here. Yeah, I mean, you have to dig deep to find anything beyond that sweetness. I didn't expect this to be so sweet. Maker's Mark to me, it's a little sweet, but I usually get that from the finishes, right? Like the French oak with the 46 brings a different element of spice and sweetness that regular Maker's Mark doesn't have. This one is really, really sweet. So I'm wondering if the corn in like Maker's Mark really is bringing more depth to it because this, while it tastes good, really leaves a lot to be desired in terms of complexity here. And I know with the wheat whiskey, that's a little bit harder to find. But that being said, I mean, one of my favorite whiskeys this year so far was the Bernheim 10-year-old wheat whiskey. Now, that's a little bit older than this. Price was actually a little bit cheaper than this. But to me, that one has so much complexity and depth to it that I've never really experienced on a wheat whiskey. So maybe I've kind of set my expectations so high because of that really great release earlier this year. But this is kind of reminding me of what I normally expect from wheat whiskeys. A little bit of a simpler flavor profile, not spicy at all. Honestly, this does not drink the 116.4 proof. I'd probably guess it's between 105 to 110 if I was guessing. But honestly, that's not a bad thing. It's just the lack of depth and character beyond just the initial sweet, bright, approachable flavor. There's really not much more beyond that. There's a hint of citrus on the back end towards the finish, but the finish is short to medium. It's not crazy long like some other Maker's Mark releases are. And I really wish I could get some of that oak note. And I'm wondering again, because there's a chance this is younger whiskey. So there's a chance that is impacting it as well. And now it's time to get into my bite-sized review, which I keep it short and sweet here. I just give it a score out of 10 that considers all things like availability, price, proof, palate, nose, everything all considered. So for this year's Star Hill Farm American Wheat Whiskey, I think it's a great idea. I love that Maker's Mark is expanding beyond the traditional mash bill. I love that they're trying something new. I like that they're putting a different label on it to not confuse people that are fans of Maker's Mark. I think that's actually a really good marketing move. But that being said, This to me does not drink like a $100 to a $120 whiskey. Honestly, if this were priced between $50 and $60, I would have a much more favorable opinion on it. So with all that into consideration, I'm going to give this one a 6.5 out of 10 because I like it. It's not a bad whiskey at all. I would gladly drink a pour of it. I don't think I would buy a second bottle of it, especially at $120. I think honestly, if it was retail of 120, I would probably rank this closer to a 6, but because I did overpay a little bit, that's more on me. So it's 100. I think it's, that's still up there in price. So I'll give it a 6.5. It's not something I'm going to be reaching for another bottle of, but it's definitely a fun one to showcase what estate grown whiskey can be. So seeing sustainable farming and other people doing sustainable barrel sourcing is incredible. So I want to encourage them to keep it up. That's why I'll give it a 6.5. But I've heard that last year's release was maybe a little bit better. So if I have a chance to try 2025, I'll definitely give that a comparison. But yeah, for me, this one, it was fine. I don't regret picking it up. I do regret paying what I did. But yeah, that's just my honest bite-sized review for you guys. Now, feel free to disagree with me. This might be your favorite whiskey of the year. If so, let me know in the comments on the YouTube video of this podcast, or you can join our Discord server. You can go to bourbonbytes.com and click the link to the Bourbon Bytes Discord server there. Everyone's welcome. We share the latest news stories there automatically, as well as have cool discussions about what we've picked up lately. So if you have thoughts on this bottle beyond what I've said, please leave a comment. Let me know what you think. But that does it for this week's episode. I feel like I went a little fast, so apologies if this is a little shorter than normal. I just had a lot to get through, and I was really excited to try this whiskey, so a little bummed, but I'm glad I tried it. I might not seek out another bottle for next year unless maybe they bring it an age statement or people just are raving about it. So I'm curious to hear what you think. I actually see a few whiskey tubers reviewed it, so I'm going to watch those right after this podcast. I think Jason from the Mash and Drum just uploaded literally a couple hours ago, so I wanted to make sure not to watch that before it because I didn't want to shape my opinion. So you guys go watch Jason's video as well. He's an amazing whiskey tuber on the internet. So cheers. Until next time, this has been the Bourbon Bytes Podcast, a whiskey podcast with a gaming twist. I'll talk to you guys next episode. Cheers and game on.